York's classic rock, Q1043.
I want to welcome Bernard McMahon and Allison McGordy, producer, writer, co-producer of the most fantastic film on Zeppelin, Becoming Led Zeppelin. And congratulations to you guys. You're breaking box office records already.
Thank you, Carol.
And tell us about the box office record of the IMAX.
It's the biggest selling music documentary of all time. Biggest selling music film in IMAX in history.
Amazing. Now, I know I saw the Stones in IMAX. And that was, how long ago was that? It was like 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
But I haven't seen this in IMAX. I saw it twice, but just amazing.
This is made as you would, as Led Zeppelin is made to be seen on the biggest screen possible, with the biggest sound system you can find. So.
Well, that's great. And you are preaching to the choir here on this show. Get the lead out, because everybody that's listening already loves Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, I guess this is the Valhalla of radio shows for our movie. Yeah,
well, I hope so.
We're proud to be here. And if you recall, Carol, I actually called you at the very beginning of making this film for background research, because someone told me that you had been you'd been to the first New York concert.
Yeah.
In early '69, and I was really interested in talking for people that had seen those early shows, which is what our film's about. It's becoming Led Zeppelin. It's that first year, and I wanted and Carol gave me a very vivid description of her journey. I think you got there quite late, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I got there. It was just because I was driving up from Philly, because I was at university there.
Yeah.
And I missed most of it. But the point that I think I was making to you was, as amazing as the music was, it was also terrifying to me personally. I mean, it was so gargantuan. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That I don't know if I want to really meet these guys. And then they started getting this reputation, and I'll meet them later when they're older. And I did. You know what I'm saying? I just, a little scary at that time. Yeah. But you have both a history with music and Americana films, and you've won awards, and you, I think, have elevated Zeppelin now to a cultural status, in a way. It's not just a movie about a music film. You could have just done that. But was that part of your goal, to kind of put them in a cultural, even Americana context, because they broke here?
Yes, it was. We had made a series of films prior to this called American Epic, which were about the first blues, gospel, country, Cajun, Hawaiian records made in the 20s and 30s. And that's essentially the foundation of all American popular music. And the groups influenced by it, like Led Zeppelin.
Right.
And so we did those 4 films with Robert Redford. And when we finished those films, we thought, we want to do one more music film. And I thought we wanted to do something that picked up where American Epic had left off, like at the end of the Second World War, and take you through the 50s and the 60s. And I turned to Alice and I said, I think it's Led Zeppelin, because when I was 12, my mum was an antique dealer, and she brought back a box of junk. In the bottom of this box was this little paperback book called Led Zeppelin, and it was written by a fella called Howard Milett and published in around 74 or something like that. And it was the first ever book about Led Zeppelin. I think a lot of that information has been lost now, and it's not part of the lexicon. But to me, it was like the story of these 4 kids that was trying to make their way in the music business in Britain, and then meeting in this basement, and against all these adversarial odds, they kind of take over the world. And I found that book hugely inspiring as a little boy. I read it twice, and a lot of the things that inspire me and how I do my work was from reading that book. So I said to Alison, I know that this is a great story because I loved the story before I fell in love with their music.
Oh, really?
I hadn't heard their music when I read that book. I got into their music after I'd read the book twice. Then I went and tried to find their records. So I knew the story was great, and I went to see her and said, "This, what do you think about this?"
That's right.
And so we
And that's right. So we spent 7 months researching, looking for any archive that might exist, and there was not a lot. We wrote a script, and then we created a storyboard so that we would then be ready if we got an opportunity to meet the group.
And everyone we were very secretive about it, but we mentioned it to
yes.
a couple of people, and they said, "You're insane. There's no way Led Zeppelin will ever agree to a film. Why are you doing all that work? And yeah, you're crazy." And we were like, "We don't care. We think it's a good story, and I want to watch this on a screen." And I was making it for my 12-year-old self, and Alison's 12-year-old self. That was what we were writing it for. So we reached out to the group.
Yeah, we got the first person we got to meet was Jimmy Page. So we flew into London and met.
And he agreed to meet, which
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
incredible, you know.
And that meeting was 7 hours. 7 hours
Yeah.
long,
Yeah.
the very first
And
meeting.
it transpired that he was a huge fan of American Epic.
Well, I
Yeah.
bet that Robert Plant would be too, because he spent all
He-
this time in Austin.
Because
And
Robert tramps around the South.
yeah,
Particularly with, he used to do a lot with Justin Adams that he played with.
Yes, that's
and
right.
yet, on any day off he had, he'd be going to Clarksville, sorry,
Yeah.
or
Clarksville, or whatever.
yeah, anywhere in Mississippi, and tracking down where these musicians came
Yeah.
from. So I knew Justin, and so Justin had actually been apparently telling Robert "Oh my God, my friends have found pictures of Henry Thomas. Oh my goodness, my friends have found the first ever picture from the 30s of Son House." And so this stuff, I think, was being relayed to him. So when we met him, he was a huge American Epic fan. So that was kind of great. And then John Paul Jones, we contacted his managers, and we just said, "We're going to send this DVD of American Epic, and all we ask is he watches the first 15 minutes of it, and if he doesn't like it, he'll never hear from us again." And so we sent the DVD in, and
Unfortunately,
2 days later,
we heard back from them and they said, well, he'll meet you. And thankfully for us, he had the very first episode is about the Carter family. And he had actually made a pilgrimage to Macy Springs, where the Carter family are from, and the Carter fold, and met the very people that we had met, Dale Jett and Phil
Wow.
Salyer.
yeah. So you were meeting with these three guys that we realised we had an absolute common passion in the music that we were interested in, and all of us individually had tramped around these places
Yeah.
looking for these things. So
Yeah.
you're meeting these guys, and you like immediately have got this thing in common with them.
well,
you
I
know?
bet something else too. Just off the top of my head, that if it were anybody else, I don't think that. I'm guessing that Robert Plant would not have been interested because I think the fact that you're putting it in a more musicology type of a story. You're once again, you're elevating the whole story into something that is related to Americana. It's somewhat educational. He's, because he came from that background, that he would really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think you're. I think you're right. I mean, when I watch, if I watch something about music, I want it to be about music, and I want to hear the music, and I want to feel the music, and I want the film to make me appreciate and understand and get more out of that music than before I watched the movie, And so I think with this, it was really this sense of, I mean, now I look at it from the point of view of what you're saying. Like, we've just come out and we've made a film about Charlie Patton, the Carter family, Mississippi John Hurt, Lydia Mendoza. And if I was them and I'm the next on the line
Yeah,
from
see.
that, I'd be like, I'll be there, you know.
Right, that's
you
what
know
I
what I mean.
mean.
I mean that's esteemed. That's Olympian company, you know.
Right, and
those are
also-
the fathers of everything.
Did you go to the reunion in 2007 at the O2 Arena?
I did. Alison didn't. Yeah.
No, I wasn't in the country at the time.
Oh well, it was a 24-hour blitz from here. They sent me over so I could do a report. Hey, we're here now, and I think that Robert Plant's presentation of that show was so totally different, purposefully, because he was trying to point out all the influences on each song. If you remember, he said, I got this from gospel, I got this from the blues, and then he made some crack about, oh no, I won't be doing any of that dancing, which I think he has a little conundrum with that presentation that he gave so long ago. And so this is a more respectable way of putting it, and I think that's part of the reason that he might have really loved doing this for you.
Well, yeah, it's also, as I said, he'd watched American Epic.
Yeah.
And American Epic is like, films are team efforts. It's the same group of people putting this together. And there's like an insane amount of work in Epic. The stuff that's been dug up and found that's in that thing. Most of that stuff wasn't even known to exist. I mean, that was a film where people were going, also, you're crazy. You can't make this film. There is no film footage from that period. But we found it. And so it's sort of following on that tradition. So I think it was like looking at it as like, this is legacy stuff,
Yeah.
you know? It's just like, it needs to be there. And we definitely have that approach. We make films like, we think we do untold stories, and we feel a pressure that we do untold stories. You've got to do the absolute best you can, because you've got that one opportunity to do this thing that's never been done before. So you've got to make sure you've done that the most thorough way you possibly can. But the interesting thing about Zeppelin was, we presented it to Robert, we presented it to John Paul Jones, and they were all chiming in with all these amazing additional memories. And don't forget, this is like a 70-page storyboard, and there's not a word written on it, and because we'd committed everything to memory, every date, every name. Because I think you sit in front of someone, you got to know that subject well. That's if someone came to me and said, "Oh, I'll make a film about you," I'd expect them to know a bit about my life.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
So we got all this here, and we're going through this whole thing,
And at the first meeting with Jimmy, he threw in a few test questions. And at one point, Brendan was talking about the very first meeting that he...
I said, this is where you first go and see Robert Plant singing.
Yeah.
And he said, what was the name of the group Robert was in? When
Obstreadle, yeah.
And I'm like, Obstreadle.
And he went, yes, well done, very good, carry on.
Yeah, and that's...
Yeah.
Well, I would expect that. Now, my next question with that is, since Jimmy is really the architect of the band, how much did he contribute as far as sonically or anything else to your film? I can't imagine him going, okay, just go do it.
Well, actually, he did. That's
Yes,
exactly
that's
what
exactly
he did.
what he did.
Yeah, because we
And the
said
thing-
we needed, as artists ourselves, we needed our total artistic control for our own credibility, and so and for the film's credibility, and so he agreed, to his credit, and the rest of the members as well. They all agreed. They no editorial control, and they just let us get on with it.
Yeah.
Really?
And,
the one
they're
thing
not
that they-
producers of the film,
Yeah.
and this is to their credit. I mean, this is like, what's really impressive with them is that they've not done a film in their whole career, but when they decide this is the thing to do, they don't actually try and control it. They
That's
collaborate.
pretty amazing,
And so
because
they
Jimmy
literally
especially. Jimmy
Yeah.
is so on point with every last thing with his recording, and my goodness.
But this is a very smart guy.
Oh,
like
yeah.
when he met us, he when I say he's watched American Epic, he's watched American Epic. He knows what those 20s and 30s records normally sound like.
Oh, yeah.
So he can hear what we've done. So he's like, these guys work hardcore at sound. So they're not going to be throwing this together. So to us, I mean, we did that. This is very hardcore, the sound in this Zeppelin film.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they gave us that freedom to make the movie.
The only thing they did do is they brought in extra art of things like their personal diaries, family photographs, things that nobody's ever seen before to help.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they turned up with each of them to the interviews with bags of archive, all of it I'd never seen before. Like Robert turned up with this hilarious sort of gift, which was like, it was the Led Zeppelin box set with the cornfield, the corn circles on it. A vinyl box set. And in Sharpie, he'd written pre-Led Zeppelin. And when I opened the lid up, it was a lacquer of a recording him and John Bonham had written and made together before Led Zeppelin.
In the Band of Joy or
called
something?
Memory Lane, in Robert Plant and the Band of Joy. And he handed that to us to take to LA, and that's what you hear in the film. You hear that is their song that they wrote, and no one's heard it before.
So the sound then, I mean, of all the music there, how did you remix it for the movie, remaster it? What did you do?
Well, that's the key thing. I don't think you should mess with Zeppelin music at all. They're the masters in that field. So what we wanted to give you is the pure sound as it was originally intended in 1969 for it to be heard. So when you make an album, at that period, there are 3 steps to that process. Step 1 is you make a 1/4-inch master, which is a mix down from the studio. Step 2 is you make what's called a production master that will often happen at Atlantic Records, and that is the 1/4-inch from which they cut the lacquers, which is step 3. And those lacquers are so radically altering the production master and defining what is actually turning the public on, that is actually your true master. That lacquer is what sent people crazy or not in that era. So what you're hearing is we have researched and found what we think is the absolute ultimate lacquer cut of 1 and 2. And so 1 was a particular one done by George Piros, who was a naval guy, classical music lover, hated rock music, but he knew how to cut Led Zeppelin 1. That's the absolute mother effer. Then the second one is, I went through 3 of them, an absolutely pristine copy of Bob Ludwig's cut of 2. And it's literally the cleanest pressing I've ever heard. I think it was from the Presswell plant. We had pristine ones from each of the 4 plants. And then no digital work whatsoever on those things. They're transferred on our state-of-the-art lathe in LA. The arm is adjusted for every track. His whole thing is readjusted. I mean, it's hardcore. So what you're hearing is the ultimate sound of that music as it was intended, but on the best playback system in the world. So it's total purity. And all the music before them is from the original lacquers, the original discs. So you hear the sound of Johnny Burnett in 56. You hear the sound of Shirley Bassey in 65. So when Zeppelin 1 comes out, you hear the sonic difference in real time of what that music is.
Yes.
And that's what the films. And then when you get to Zeppelin 2, you get this even wider stereo spread and this amazing production that Page is doing, like where he's really using it. You hear that, that's your finale at the end of the film. It's like, well, top that. You can't.
No, you can't.
So it's totally pure. The only thing we've done any work on is occasionally there's a live performance that was, not ever intended for commercial release in a major way. It might have lacked some bottom end. But essentially, we are giving this to you like we're literally taking the pineapple off the tree in 69 and like bringing you back in time and putting it on your plate like a minute after we've cut it from the tree. It's that fresh. That's the sound you're getting.
Well, the reason, because this is on video, that I keep grinning and looking at my husband here, Paul Logus, he is, well, right now he's a mastering engineer. But as a mixer and a producer, he did work with Jimmy. But this is his wheelhouse, so to speak.
Right.
And you were come here. You can come here for a second. You were saying how fantastic the sound was.
Chime on in. So what you want to say?
He cut Slacker, and you were saying how amazing this thing sounded, and that was
mind blowing. I'm just like 100 times more impressed hearing all this detail with the sonics and I was surprised that Jimmy they all gave you guys carte blanche with the sonics and let your creative vision go. But I mean, man, you guys did such an incredible.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I think that permission was given because of American Epic was about purity. We're presenting that 20s stuff pure. You know, we're not trying to, what they call it, make it acceptable to the kids, you know? And what people want is they want pure stuff, the raw stuff originally intended. You know, like, so for example, you know, with those Chuck Berry records and these rock, like Jimmy loves, you know, the Elvis Sun records, you know?
Yeah.
Well, those records, Sam Phillips was applying reverb to those records as he's cutting them. So you can never, ever get the sound of those original 45s in any reissue, because a lot of that stuff was done literally as he's making the lacquer that's going to press the record. And so this is my view with the Zeppelin. It's like all this stuff in the studio was done knowing that that final step was going to happen, and that someone like Ludwig was going to be there going, push this, push that, push. That's the finished record. And Jimmy will tell you himself, he goes, that's the ultimate Led Zeppelin too, you know?
And the thing about this film is that the audience will get, whether you go to IMAX or a regular AMC or Regal, whatever your closest cinema is, you will get to hear how Led Zeppelin is supposed to sound on the biggest sound system possible.
Plus, Led Zeppelin's music is so amazing, it allowed us to figure out an actual flaw in every single DCP that is delivered to every cinema on planet Earth. John Bonham's drum parts are so sophisticated that when the master came in from Sony Pictures, they're called DCPs, and that is how every movie is delivered to every cinema on planet Earth. When the DCP came in, I was screening the film for Bob Weir and Peter Coyote in the Bay Area, and I thought, and Taj Mahal was also, you know, let's play it for some of the heads of the counterculture that maybe didn't really watch Zeppelin, see what they think. Well, they were digging it, you know. And Weir said they're like the John Coltrane trio, you know, with a singer. I mean, that's as high praise as you can get, isn't it, from a musician? Yeah. And they're watching this, but I'm sitting going, compared to what I'd worked, so I'm going, the music's dragging, you know. And I sort of call up Sony and go, something wrong with the master, the music's dragging. Have another screening, another master, same deal, music's dragging. So I went to our sound guy, Nick Berg, who's worked through from American Avenue, and said, you got to go through the schematics of these industry DCPs. There's something not right in it. And he unpacks the whole thing and found out that in order to save a few hours of packaging time, they'd taken a shortcut on the instructions given to every filmmaker, and the subwoofer, that's the bass speaker, is getting the sound on every film you see in the cinema a fraction of a second late.
And we're all stunned. We sit here, oh my God.
And that, John Bonham and Paul Jones showed that up with their playing. I played it to the heads of IMAX, you know, and these other theatre groups, and put it on. And I said, here's the correct version, and here's what the industry insists you deliver. And it literally sounded like the band had 4 pints of beer.
Well,
and actually, we were working on this till the very last minute.
Yeah,
this happened,
and that's why
literally
IMAX and Sony, because this is from years ago, whenever that was decided. This is not the current people running things now. Years ago, this packaging thing came up of how these things be made. Do you know what's brilliant about IMAX and Sony Pictures Glasses? Even though all the masters have been made and they're about to go out the next day, they recalled it all so it could be corrected.
Wow.
Let's do it again.
Yeah. So what you're hearing, I think, is the first fully in sync film in probably in 30 years in cinema.
When we saw it at Sony, that was perfect, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was right down to the wire. This was only found this out about 2.5 weeks ago.
You would still enjoy the film a lot, I would hope, with it being out of sync like every other movie. But Led Zeppelin in sync is a thing to behold. You definitely want a group of Led Zeppelin's magnitude. You want the speakers to be in sync. You know?
That rhythm section is so
that
powerful.
rhythm section
it
should be as it's meant to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the best rhythm sections in existence ever.
Yeah.
And so the idea to me that there's anything wrong in how you're playing that back is just an anathema to me. It's anything that is messing with their music is like, you should not be doing it, you know? Totally.
The visual is stunning, and the sound is stunning, and it's just It was just mind blowing.
Yeah, no, this
Oh,
was
that's so kind of you to say. It's made for love. You know, the film's made for love. You know, the music is, you know, however difficult it is to make this film, and it was really hard to get this. I wanted it to be play like Rocky Horror, you know, where
You
you
can
could
keep
watch
going,
it over
yeah,
and
yeah,
over
yeah.
again.
Yeah.
You could go 3 or 4 times a year and just completely get into it. And it's like this 2-hour world where, and we search pretty much the entire planet bar the Mariana Trench for every clip. I'm praying that I don't think there's anything else that can turn up from this era that's not in this movie. But you're creating this world, but with all the difficulty to get the story to flow in this smooth way, the one thing that was always utterly joy was the music. When the songs would come up, they always sounded fantastic. And I remember thinking near the end of production, I said, what other group could we have made a film of where we would not literally want to break those records over our knees, you know, after that amount of listening to them? Zeppelin, it's always interesting.
That's
you know?
how come 40 years. I mean, I've been. You can't get tired of it. I mean, who else could I play every single night? Every single.
You showed me this huge list of all these shows you've done, and a lot of people would go, if it was another subject, go, you're crazy. I actually go, no, I totally see why you can do this for years and years, because it never gets boring.
No.
It's always interesting.
And you always get another little tidbit. You know, like
Exactly.
for
Oh
example,
yeah, totally, yeah.
for example, you know, when they go see Robert, the first thing when they're asking, you know, when they ask and they say, "Where is Robert Plant?" He goes, "I'm him." They thought he was the bouncer. You know, they did that. And then he gets a telegram. Did he tell you about the telegram? You know, you always get this little other little.
I met the film director James Samuel, who's I think of West Indian descent and wonderful in London recently, and he came backstage at the Green Room and he was like, I just watched your movie and it was wonderful stuff, and he directed The Harder They Fall. And he was like a huge Terry Reid fan, and he was going in and he was coming and talking about Super Lungs, and then he came up to me and he said, I can't believe it. That dude's sitting right opposite Peter Grant, that Mickey Mouse. He nicked him. He stole him. You know what I mean? And
But
like
Terry
poached
Reid,
him.
I mean, he turned him down.
Ah.
I mean, you know, well, Jimmy said, well, at least from my, he wanted Steve Marriott, Small Faces, and he said, no, I'm in Small Faces. I don't want to do that.
Well, what that was that was when he was recording Beck's Bolero.
Yeah.
It was John. It was meant to be Entwistle on the bass, and then he didn't come, and then it was John Paul Jones came in, Moon on the drums, and apparently after the session they were chatting about
what should we call it?
making a group, and I think Moon was saying something on the lines of that
that'll go over.
He
like
was having a real spat with Pete Townsend, and so they formed a group, and so that was who they wanted to get Steve Marriott, and they called Don Arden found about it, and he said in our interview with Jimmy he called up Jimmy and said, I hear you want to use you want to use Steve Marriott for this band. And he said that's absolutely fine as long as you don't mind playing guitar with broken fingers.
Oh. And then, well, you know, I'm getting way off the topic.
Right.
They did. Steve Marriott did. Small Faces did "You Need Love," which well, it is whole lot of love. I mean, you know, it's the precursor.
Yeah, you see, Robert gives a lot of in the film. You can talk about Robert gives a lot of props, you know, to this music in this film. It's really heartfelt. Like, so, he talks about Sonny Boy Williams, and you see his big performance of Sonny Boy Williams, and who he saw at the American Folk Blues Festival, and who he actually accosted in the toilet, which is. I wanted to put that in a film, but it's such a weird story. He accosted in the toilet, and you know, and Sonny Boy just said, "Fuck off, kid," like this. You know what I mean? But it didn't bother Robert. He was next to his idol. But as he says in the movie, you know, he said, Sonny Boy was my musical bloodstream. Mm-hmm. You know, and I mean, it's the props. He plays them, and he talks about the writing of Whole Lot of Love. And there's a lot of generosity in the film. They really pay tribute to the things in the movie that influenced them. You know.
They did at the beginning.
None of them did really, did they? All those groups were, You know, and I never figure it out. I mean, you know, with the Stones and all these people, but I think also the publishers quite like, oh, we'll put your name on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't forget they're making money out of it too. So, you know, sometimes I don't know where you should really appropriate the blame, because I said
Yeah.
the music publisher is happy if his artist has written all the songs, you know. So, you know, but yeah, I think it's it very much is part of that kind of extended, you know,
Well, that's
American
why,
story.
That's,
you know.
that's why that was where I started asking you, because it seemed so logical in that way that this would be, well, it was an American story. You know, from my perspective, going over to Europe, not that I've been there that much, but they're not as big there. They've never been nowhere as big in UK or France or anything like that, because I saw a plant in France. Nobody cared, you know. He was opening up for Lenny Kravitz, all right. But here, they're on the radio every 10 minutes, and in fact, they love the enthusiasm that we, the Americans, have for them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the film. You see it in the film. What's sort of moving is these four kids, and they're growing up in the rubble of World War II, and they're looking over to this sort of Technicolor dream that is rock and roll with diners and Cadillacs and this exciting music and these big movies, and they're going, we want to be there. And don't forget the thing I thought that Taj Mahal recently sent me, these interviews that, you know, Bill Wyman had been recording, who's now in his dotage, has some very interesting observations on this. And he said, you know, we were growing up, as you see in the Led Zeppelin film, Britain was very poor. It did not recover quickly from the war like America, which literally became a booming superpower within a few years.
Right.
No, there was rationing all throughout Jimmy and John Paul Jones's and Rob Plant's childhood. People queuing up with food stamps for things like this. So you imagine you manage to go to the cinema once or twice a week, or you get these little 45s in. How exciting this looks, you know what I mean? And so that's the journey. It's the quest. It's the childhood quest of like, this is.
That was like for us as well, though. I mean, we wanted to come to America too, didn't we?
Well, you're here now.
That is why I related to it. Yeah, Alison's right. As a little boy, and I was making my 8mm films, I was sitting in our little garden in suburban London in a semi-detached house, and I would look at the planes flying over from Heathrow and imagine that they were going to America and wishing I could be on them.
Yeah.
Well, you've certainly come this far, and you're going to go obviously a lot further with this film. Did you expect that this film would garner the amount of attention? I mean, you're hoping,
No, it's mind blowing, really. It's astonishing. I mean, we were at Fiery concert at the Forum, LA Forum, and we heard Pink doing a cover of the
Babe,
I'm Gonna Leave You, and it was only when
yeah,
the
that
lights
was
went
great.
flashing out, it was like. That's when I realised I thought, this is Led Zeppelin. We've just made the Led Zeppelin film. But until I saw the crowd and the lights, I don't think it hit me quite how big this was.
And
Yeah,
by the
because
way,
we made it like American Epic,
Yeah.
just about
Yes.
the story
Yeah.
and the music. And so they were like this subject, like Son House or Charlie Patton that we liked.
Yeah.
And just who is this? Who are these people? And so it was very intimate for us. The
Right.
interviews are very intimate. So it was a very intimate story for us. And it was, as you say, when we were at the Forum and we heard the brilliance, the dynamics. I mean, it literally blew every other track out of the water because she did a very faithful version.
Yes, she did.
So
She
when you
did.
heard the dynamics of that song in that room, you went,
Amazing.
my God, the construction of this. And that's, we walked out and we went, we've just made the Led Zeppelin film.
But-
you know?
the thing is, they took. Have you heard the Joan Baez version that
Yes.
that they were listening to? That is so shrill. It's so high, you know. And what they did to it was amazing. And when Pink did a great job. Well, I wanted to. I know we have to wrap it up, but gee, I had more questions. What was the most difficult piece of not memorabilia?
Archive.
Yes, archive that you had to get.
Well, the hardest
Bet that John
archive of
Bonham,
what was finding the John. There were
Yes.
three John Bonham interviews
Yes.
that are in the film. That was the hardest because when we sat down with Robert, I'd said to Robert, you know, we
wanted
want everyone to have an equal voice in the film.
And we didn't know initially how we were going to have John Bonham speak, but
Yes.
fortunately, Deborah Bonham, his sister, gave us the 8mm films that his father, Jack Bonham, had shot when he was a kid, so we could tell, so we could see him in
you
his
know, as a child, like playing his first drum kit.
And then Bernard fortunately discovered this tape in Australia,
and then two others in America,
yeah.
and you know, and it was like a real detective search. So I would hear a little fragment of some like bootleg, and then
Yes.
have to track down. But I could hear these were 1/4-inch tapes, and so I was able to track these things down. And it was just what was amazing when it came in. He was saying all these things that the rest of the band hadn't said in the movie, and so it was almost like he was coming in from the astral plane.
Yeah, and you could
going,
see Robert Plant getting so emotional.
Well,
Yeah.
Robert, that's the key thing. Robert's story is so emotional. You know, he's made homeless by his parents because he won't become a chartered
Yeah.
accountant. We wanted him to be able to just tell his own story. And the thing is, Zeppelin is, of all the groups, it is 4 key people that are equally contributing to this thing and making it work. You take any one of those things out, the watch doesn't work anymore. And so it's super crucial that you understand that they're all fundamental. So you've got to try and find a way that they've all got a voice, you know?
Yes, and you certainly did get John Bonham in there.
Mm.
You know what I wanted to ask you. They're all commenting. They're all watching the film, but not at the same time.
Mm.
No, they weren't all there together.
Well, we all brought us in the same place. We'd met all the group together. But when you make films, you have to make an assessment when you meet the subjects. Should I interview you separately or should I
Yes.
interview you together? It is incredibly rare as a film director to meet a group of 3 people that talk well together and in a balanced way hand the topic from
Right.
one to the other and back
Right.
again. That is very, very rare. So it's no comment on Zeppelin. If they had had some kind of Laurel and Hardy banter between them, I would have for sure done it with them. But because it's so intimate,
and a lot of it's before the time they became Led Zeppelin. So the first, 40 minutes of the film is getting to know them as kids and young men, establishing their careers. And so you can't have people sitting.
you
And
wouldn't
where
have
were they-
John Paul Jones taking you through his becoming the organist and choir master and just sitting 10 feet away. Jimmy and John,
blah, blah, blah.
Robert Plant got to twirl their thumbs.
Yeah.
Because we're going deep into this stuff, in the film. We're going, and we're finding photographs of that church he hasn't seen in 60 years. It was bulldozed 2 years after he left, and putting those on screen. So he's like going, "Oh my God, there's that place."
So where was it that they were seated? Is it your place, their place? Where were you?
We set up a special place to do the interviews, and our main thing was we wanted something that read as England,
Oh yeah.
because this is the ultimate English group. And what's interesting about Led Zeppelin is, apart from these 4 different musical characters, you got 2 from the Midlands,
Yeah.
at West Midlands, and 2 from the London environs.
Uh-huh.
Now those those factions normally never collaborate. So the West Midlands is like the home of Shakespeare. It's the home of Tolkien. I mean, it's the heart of British culture. But there's an enormous snobbery in the London towards the Midlands and other places. My mum's from Yorkshire. I mean, people in London where I grew up, they look down on everybody.
Yeah.
So
Go back
those
to
two,
Jersey,
Those
you know.
2 groups coming together in one band
Yeah.
is unique. I was going through my mind of the most successful groups, and I could not think of one. I mean, the comparison would be something like, in America, like 2 members of Talking Heads fusing with 2 members of Lynyrd Skynyrd. 2 groups I happen to absolutely love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just very
be
unusual
very funny.
fusion.
Yes. Now,
Yeah.
I know we've got to wrap it up. What was, I would have to ask, what was the most surprising element that you found after talking to them, putting it together? what surprised you the most? Because you had already written a storyboard.
Just how, yeah, it was amazing how warm and personable they were. And one of the surprises was after our first meeting with Jimmy, he phoned up a couple of days later and said, "How would you like to come to Pangbourne with me?" And so we said yes, of course. And we met him at the train station. We bought a ticket from the machine, and the three of us got on a train out to Pangbourne.
A suburban train
yeah,
with the
yeah.
commuters.
And
you
we
know?
walked around this beautiful sort of medieval village, and it turned out that it was the first time he had been back there since in 50 years since he lived there.
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
that was astonishing.
Okay.
Yeah, it was this
Yeah.
really wonderful thing, and and it was like I'm going to take you into my world, a world that I haven't actually even been back into these places in all this time.
And you see that
it was
place
very
in the
emotional.
Yeah.
And we see that in the film. And,
And
he
and
brings us back to Pangbourne, and the viewer sees this house, the boat house, where they had their very first meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he was saying this is the heart of, he's saying, taking you, this is the heart of where it happens. You know, I'm going to walk those fields with you, of where this is where I got these ideas, you know?
Very, very, all fantastic.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, you've got to go, and I could be, you know, asking
We'll
you.
come back.
We would love to come back.
Yeah.
We would love to come back.
on back.
Yeah.
Hey, come on back tomorrow. I'm on the air tomorrow night. We'll squeeze you in to get the lead out or something like that. No, seriously. But first of all, congratulations on the success of the film, and any plans further after this? Yeah.
The film is only out in IMAX at the moment, but I think from tomorrow it opens wide.
That's
in
right.
1,000 cinemas in every single state in America, including Puerto Rico.
So
Yay.
just take. I know it's
So go with your friends.
it's wonderful, the public response. So just bring your friends down. This is made to be enjoyed with a group of friends, you know, and make some noise. You know,
That's
that's what
right.
people do in the screenings I've been to. They're lively, you know.
Yeah.
That's what it's for, you know. This is not a movie to watch on your sofa on your own. This is like,
Well,
get down there.
It's like going to the show, and
Yeah.
last one I went to, I got a funny story, but that's for another time. So anyway, I want to thank Bernard McMahon, Allison McGordy. It's an honor to have you here. Q1043, Premier Networks, iHeart, Get the Lead Out, and more power to you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Carol.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Carol.
much.
Oh, yay!
Thank you.
New York's classic rock, Q1043.